Morning, guys. It's the Swordfish once again with a special commentary for the day. No gameplay behind, just my soothing voice and a couple images. I beg all of you to stay till the end, even if it seems uninteresting at times. I am getting to a point, and I do hope you listen. As you can see, my voice is quite serious this time. For those of you that do not understand English because you're coming from other news sources, subtitles will be facilitated at some point in Spanish, hopefully below. Anyway, for now, I hope someone translates something of the sort, and you bear with my English. Alright, so why is today a special day? Today is a special day for Catalonia because basically they voted. It's the 9th of November, and they voted. Congratulations, Catalonia. You did an amazing thing. Why is this amazing? Allow me to explain. And I'll start from the beginning of time, alright? Legit, I'll start from the beginning of time. When Spain formed. See, Catalonia at one point joined through a mutual alliance, which is pretty much just a marriage, but before it was called mutual alliance, between Aragon and the County Catalonia, and they became the Crown of Aragon, of course. And then later the Crown of Aragon combined with the Crown of Castile to become what would later become Spain, and Isabel the Conqueror and Ferdinand of Aragon and all that crap. Alright, so that's quite great, but not. However, they became a quite important empire when they started conquering literally everything, but due to inflation, which our kings were not aware of, we lost it all as Spaniard. I'm speaking as a Spaniard right now. However, that things happen, empires fall, whatever. The important part comes later when there's a war of succession for the Austrians and the Bourbons. And you'll see why I'm explaining all this history later, but there was a war of succession between the current reigning family, the Austrian, and the French family, the Bourbons. And the Bourbons won. Catalonia sided with the Austrians because they were less centralist, mainly. I mean, there's more reasons for it, obviously, but that was the main reason. And the Austrians eventually decided that it was not worth fighting the war. They left the Catalans. Barcelona was sieged for at least 3 months. And then the war finally ended in 1714, 9/11. That's why it's celebrated here. That's the final day of the siege. Anyway, that's kind of the history here. And then the Bourbons have been reigning ever since. And Catalonia has been having a pretty bad treatment. That, coupled with the fact that we had a dictatorship literally 40 years ago, was not really nice treatment for the Catalans. And the Catalans are people with their own culture, with their own language, very distinct from the Spaniards in the same way that the French are distinct from the Spaniards. There's really that level of difference. They have their own language, which comes from Romanic, some Occitanian. It's a very weird language, honestly, linguistically speaking. But essentially, they have their own language that developed in a similar way to the French language or the Spanish language or whatever not. And they also have their own culture. They have their own customs. They all every kind of little thing, right? So that's something. They also have a very specific nationalist spirit, which started rising in 1900s. And this spirit started to rise recently with, some people will say the crisis, but it really wasn't economic. It was mostly due to the bad treatment of Catalans by the Spanish government by taking away many of their something called the Estatut, which was essentially kind of a Catalan constitution to some extent. It granted them some special powers similar to the powers that the states have in the United States, something of the sort. And so, since that started happening, Catalonia started to get a little mad, and what they started to do was become independentist, really. And by independentist, that's the current that tries to secede from Spain, from the Kingdom of Spain, and let Catalonia become its own independent state. So this current of independence was trying to rise, and with the victory of the Popular Party, a known Catalanophobe party, or relatively Catalanophobe, perhaps not, definitely not sympathetic towards us Catalans, the independentists started to rise more and more. This led to the election of a Catalanist/independentist leader, which CiU, Convergència i Unió. And also the rise in the independentist party, Esquerra Republicana, by, the biggest it's ever been, ever since 1914 or something of the sort. So, the independentism grew, and since the current political parties were now independentist as well, they asked for a referendum, which makes sense. And a referendum essentially would be similar to the Scottish one. If the yes won, there'd be two questions, but to simplify it all, essentially a referendum would ask the Catalans if they want Catalonia to be independent. The two questions specifically were, do you want Catalonia to be a state? And if so, do you want Catalonia to be independent? So it became yes, 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 no, no, yes, which no yes would make no sense, but whatever. But the whole point is that you could vote on the independence of Catalonia. If that's the whole goal of the parties, at least, and of the people. If the yes won, then Catalonia would go through some whatever deals that needed to be made, and similar to the Treaty of Edinburgh, it would eventually become an independent state. That's the whole point of it. So that's the goal of the people and the goal of the political parties that are currently ruling. However, when this referendum was tried to be created, the constitutional judges in Spain essentially said that was anti-constitutional as it threatened the unity of Spain. And so this obviously led to it becoming illegal. And that's where we are at now, really. Today was an illegal, I'm quoting illegal, like quotation marks around illegal, referendum with, where people decided. It was essentially just a poll. It was a non-binding referendum, as it was not per se legal, where people voted, essentially. And the turn rate turns to be around 45%, 46%, around. I haven't checked lately, but it's around that, And obviously the yes is winning by an overwhelming majority. And I'll explain this a little bit later, but, it's a huge turn rate, as that's almost half the country, and that's almost as much as the elections in themselves. And obviously is the fact that it's non-binding referendum, the fact that these people came to a non-binding referendum, which ultimately means nothing except for a polling of the opinion of the people, is quite impressive. And here's where I want to commend the Catalans. Well, I'm a Catalan myself, but I want to commend the people that did do this, did vote, because above all, and I'm not going to share my political ideology or anything of the sort, because above all, I am a Democrat. I believe in democracy. For whatever reason, I believe in democracy. Call me crazy. And so the fact that Spain has decided to stop people from voting because, whatever reasons, is typical of a totalitarian regime. Ever read 1984? This is it. Like, this is the beginning of it, when people are not allowed to vote or express their opinion. And it really saddens me when I saw this, because it's a nation which is supposedly developed, a supposedly first world country, and they're trying to silence the voice of their citizens. So what the Catalans are doing, which is fighting for their independence, and more importantly, fighting for the right to vote, which was what today was about, fighting for the right to vote. Many immigrants, many people who do not believe in independence voted, just because they believed in democracy and they believed in fighting for the right to vote. However, it wasn't only the Catalans that fought for it. Many people in the international community have spoken against Spain, saying how this is anti-democratic. Unionists in England, including the BBC, which is surprisingly unionist, and many of the Scottish unionist people that delegates of Scotland and the EU and whatnot that were unionist during the referendum, have also spoken against Spain, saying that democracy is above all, and that despite them wanting unionism, that does not mean that democracy should not exist. So this beautiful union of the people, look at the irony of that, and the international community for a fight for democracy really fills me with pride, really does. But I want to address those that don't care about this or don't believe in this. And briefly, just so you guys understand, for the people that don't care about this, you guys read about Hitler, you guys read about Mussolini, Pinochet, all these dictators, and I'm not comparing it to them, but you guys read about the fact that there's a lack of freedom of expression, and you have all these Illuminati conspiracies, if any of you are American, Illuminati conspiracies of the government withholding information and whatnot, and all that stuff happening. Look no further than Catalonia to see the real thing happening. This is not a conspiracy. This is an active thing that's happening, where the government is refusing to let their citizens speak, where the government is refusing to acknowledge the voice of the people. And it stopped representing the people and has started to represent themselves and their own interests. This is the issue I see. This is the issue I see with the referendum. With the lack of a referendum. And this is why you should care. Because the whole world should care about this. Same as the whole world cared about Arab Spring, or should care about Arab Spring. The whole world cares about Syria. The fact that this is still happening in a first world country is a sign that perhaps not everything is as fine and dandy as we see it. It's a sign that perhaps we need to help, and perhaps We should all just look at the newspapers just for one day, stop reading the stupid news about Kardashians, and actually care about the world for a day. Moreover, now that I've just spoken about that, for those of you that don't believe in the act of voting, because I've heard this argument a lot, it's illegal. Laws are made by the people. In this case, people want to change a law. And they're not allowed to because the government is refusing to let them vote. Many people will talk about how the people in Catalonia are brainwashed by the government, but there's something people need to understand. First of all, there's no division here in Catalonia. I have plenty of people that are not independentist as friends. In fact, I have a really, really close friend of mine who's a girl who's really adorable. But she's against independence. However, she's voting today just for the right to vote, and I fully support her decision. There's many people that are perfect friends just with different political ideologies. However, believing in the lack of right to vote, that's not our right ideology. Nobody here is brainwashed. The government did not rise to power and then say, okay, now we're all independentists. No, what happened was that the people became so independent the government decided to take their votes by becoming independents themselves. Yeah, sure, I can believe some people in the government are actually independents, but to the majority, it's really that the government here became independents just to get our votes. Because the independentism was rising so much. Sure, fine. But that's not a brainwashing. This is a movement started by the people. The attack against independentism, that's a movement started by the Spanish government. Because the Spanish government is smart. They know what they're doing to some extent. They know that if the referendum happens, at least how things are now, we will secede. People will secede. And that is bad for the economy of Spain. The economy of Catalonia is doubtful, but the economy of Spain will definitely take a plunge. And the economy of Catalonia beginning as well. So, that is why the government of Spain is going against this. However, the government of Spain has a reason to go against this. They don't want their country per se, their government to crumble, because they cannot rely on Catalonia as a kind of a charity fund. For those of you that know, Catalonia is a huge. They give in the kind of weird economic state that Spain is. Catalonia give to other autonomous communities more than they receive. Hence, Catalonia is essentially a charity to some extent. So they produce more than they actually receive because the tax is given to the government then gives Catalonia back a small share, which is not as much as they actually produce. It's not a lie, it's facts, you can check it all. Essentially, Spain is worried because Catalonia is a huge economic power, at least within their country, and if they leave, that will be bad for Spain. That's what the government wants them not to leave. Makes perfect sense. However, people that back this up, that's why they don't want them to vote, by the way. Because if they vote, they know they will secede. That's why they want to stop the vote. They're too far in. They have to stop the vote. Sure. But now, people that support them, I don't understand. I fail to understand the reasons because the lack of legality is not why Spain is doing it. Spain is doing it because they know they will secede. They know they will lose. If you don't want Catalonia to become independent, don't support it though. You don't want Catalonia to become independent for your own selfish reasons. You don't want Catalonia to become independent because you don't want to believe in democracy. Sure, leave the country. You're free to do so. It's very easy in this world. You can move on to Spain. If you support the government just because of their own selfish reasons, which will be to support their own country, you're kind of becoming the ones that's brainwashed by the government and not the Catalan people. And that's why people should, decide to not only vote for the right to vote, ironically enough, but also understand that this is a huge thing in the world. This is a huge thing to all the people. It is a huge show of strength. A fight that has been taken in the same style as Gandhi, because has not been a single shot thrown. Everyone here has just been doing this in a very peaceful manner. This is beauty. This is beautiful. This is beautiful, really. This is the representation of beauty. And it's just that, really, guys. It's just that I wanted to say. Those of you that are in the international community, which I'm assuming are most of my viewers, please tune in. Those of you that do not support this because you do not believe Catalans should even get independence, support democracy. Support the Catalans for a right to vote. And then say, hey, we'll do propaganda, which is fair. We'll do some advertisements. We'll try to make them stay, if you really want that. But most definitely do not bind the people and allow and silence them just because you feel like you will lose if the referendum happens. And don't call for legality as a possible argument against this, because ultimately people make laws, and if people want to change a law, they're not allowed to. That's kind of crap. Now, finally, I just want to address the last point, which is the point that some people have been making, that all of Spain should vote for Catalonia. I just want to address this really quickly, because people have been telling me, first of all, England had a deciding vote in Scotland. That's people have told me this. No, they didn't. Scotland voted. Nobody English could vote. It's that simple. If Scotland voted, they did propaganda. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. But they had no deciding vote whatsoever. Just pointing that out. And now on to the point of, should Spain vote in Catalonia's independence? Most obviously not. No sane Spaniard would want Catalans to leave, because it's bad economically for them. Obviously. However, Catalonia should not be forced to kind of be a sort of a charity. It's not really a charity. It's more of a country that's forced to be that kind of way. And more importantly, the argument that, well, but Catalans have a moral debt, or Catalans are supposed to owe Spain, or whatever the hell. If any change made by bank investors in Wall Street can affect Spain as much as Catalonia leaving the country, and a change such as McDonald's reducing the burger price by 50 cents could affect Spain. However, Spain does not vote on these issues. Spain does not vote on them. Many things affect Spain. Of course they do. Germany affects Spain. The economy of Germany, the economy of the whole Europe. In a globalized culture, everything affects everything. So saying that you have a right to vote on something just because it affects you is stupid. Saying that you have a right to vote on something because, you hate that it's going to affect you in the long run is not fair. When the people themselves, the people that are the most affected by it, the people within the country that can choose to leave, they're obviously not gonna if the whole Spain votes. It's really that simple. Spain should not be allowed to intervene. In no history of referendum votations have other countries been allowed to intervene. That's how things like, what was it? That's how things like Crimea, that's it. How Crimea happens. You want Russians to vote? I mean, by all means, Russians can come vote in Catalonia, so can Spaniards, yeah. But then it's not a fair referendum. And if that stands true for Crimea, then it definitely stands true for Spain, for Catalonia as well. Don't let Spaniards vote. Let Catalans vote. Let Catalans vote about their future and support them. Because the act of voting is a representation of democracy, and hopefully is the ideal we all want to work towards. If you don't believe in democracy, however, you're by all means exempt from this commentary. Feel free to leave now. I pray that you do, but feel free to leave now. And those of you that say that, no, I believe in democracy, but I don't want them to vote, you don't. Stop lying to yourselves. Don't be a hypocrite. You don't. If you believe in democracy, you will support these people, and more importantly, you will stay informed as your duty as a globalized citizen in this world. Thank you for listening, guys, and hopefully I'll see you guys next time. Hopefully someone has stayed till the end and has enjoyed this. Goodbye.